Hello! Welcome to the Dr. Gandhi TV. Today I'm going to read the book Applying the Power of Positive Thinking by Swami Bhaktananda. A talk given at the Self-Realization Fellowship, International Headquarters, Los Angeles, November 22nd, 1977. All life, everything in creation is made of thought. But because the consciousness of most people is attuned primarily to the physical aspect of life, it is hard for them to believe that material things like trees, stones, their bodies, are all composed of ideas. However, if they would look much deeper, they would see that matter is essentially energy, and energy is essentially thought. Paramahansa Yogananda has explained to us that the whole world originated in the mind, the consciousness of God. The Creator condensed or froze His thoughts into patterns of light and energy, and finally into protons, electrons, atoms, and molecules that form this material creation. And Paramahansa Ji said that each of us also is a creator, like God, for we are made in His image. He has given us the power of thought. That is our instrument of creation. So though we may not realize it, everything begins in the mind. For instance, a beautiful statue is not just the work of a chisel and hammer. Behind it lie many thousands of thoughts. The chisel and hammer just get rid of unnecessary stone or marble so that the sculptor's ideas can manifest. Without his thoughts, that statue could not be created. Likewise, the millions of thoughts we think over the years chisel our most important creation, our life. That is why positive thinking is so important. The mind is a magic factory. Have you ever wondered why each person is different from everyone else, in looks, in health, in abilities, and so on? It is because we all think differently, and whatever we think tends to manifest. You see, God has given us not only the mind and the power to think, He has also given us free choice to think and create in whatever way we want. If we think in a negative way, we will eventually create disease, poverty, unhappiness, and all sorts of difficulties. Then we will be healthy, successful, and happy. It's as simple as that. It all stems from our thinking. Again and again, our guru emphasized the power of thought. Sometimes he would refer to the mind as a magic factory, where everything, both good and bad, is produced. He taught us that when we continually think in a certain direction, a pattern or blueprint is formed in the astral world, the realm of subtle energies from which our material world is condensed. And if we persist in thinking in that way, the pattern will eventually manifest here on earth, whether in the body, the mind, or our spiritual life. For example, if you think about a particular disease all the time, that disease will appear in the body. Master always told us, don't dwell on thoughts of disease or fear it, because such negative concentration tends to create that condition in your body. Bacteria and germs are always within our bodies and all around us. So long as the body is healthy and strong, it resists disease. But as soon as we begin to think that we are weak or vulnerable, But as soon as we begin to think that we are weak, or vulnerable, or sick, the life energy responds to that thought. Then our organs and glands begin to weaken, and the disease is able to manifest and multiply. Our body cells are controlled by the mind. They say, well, the boss has given us this thought, so we've got to work that way. Therefore, to be optimistic and have faith in God and oneself is the proper way to use the mind. Even if there are periods when things are not going well for us, if we persevere with a positive attitude, then in time, conditions will change for the better. Of course, in some cases it may take longer than in others, depending on the strength of that karmic pattern. But positive thinking will cause disease karma to break down much faster than if we made no effort. Master often said, if you have a positive attitude, you will realize that mysterious forces come to your aid to fulfill your desires. These so-called mysterious forces are the subtle astral energies that are activated by the power of thought. Negative thinking ties us down. A negative attitude limits us in whatever we try to do. In India, they say that when an elephant driver wants to temporarily leave his elephant, he ties the animal to a post or stake with a straw rope. When he comes back later, the elephant is still securely tethered to the stake. The elephant thinks he is tied fast and can't get away because of this little rope. But it is only straw. He could break it with one jerk of his neck and be free. That is the way we are sometimes. Tied down by doubts and all sorts of negative thoughts, ideas, and attitudes. These convince us that we can't improve our situation. But we can. All we have to do is change to positive thinking. Master often spoke about how patterns of thought affect the mass consciousness. In 1929, for example, the stock market crashed and everything shut down in this country, the factories and farms, and there wasn't money in circulation. People were very distressed. Many committed suicide. But Master pointed out that the factories were still there, the farms were still there, the people were still there. The money was still in the country, so why the change? He said that the change was only in the consciousness of the people, in their minds. This is mass thinking in a negative way. When many people think in the wrong way, those thoughts create havoc in nature and even affect the course of world events. It is the same with individuals. In your career or work, success comes by thinking in a positive way. Individuals who do not succeed may not be thinking strongly enough of the goals they want to achieve. Or they may be thinking, when I get more pull with the right people, then I'll be promoted to a higher position. But the real power behind success is not pull, but positive, creative thinking and working hard to materialize those thoughts. I once read about a man who made $15,000 a year as a traveling salesman for a certain company. His territory covered the entire state of Ohio. The company thought that if we were to cut his territory in half, he wouldn't have to spend as much time on the road. He could visit a lot more companies and should be able to make more sales. But when they cut his territory in half, he still made only $15,000 a year. So they reduced his territory again, so that only 1/4 of the state. Again, in a year's time, he made $15,000. So they finally came to the conclusion that he had a $15,000 consciousness and gave up trying to help him increase his income. Sometimes this is the way we are. in meditation, for instance. We may have 15-minute consciousness or 1-hour consciousness. We tend to get stuck in mental ruts and stop making the effort to go beyond a certain point. That is why it is good practice to have a longer meditation at least once a week to make us realize that we can meditate longer and deeper. If we want to progress, we must continually stretch our consciousness. We must not be satisfied with just a little piece in meditation, but continually try to go higher until we reach God. There is a saying in India, if you aim for the sky, you will at least shoot as high as the trees. Our goal is the highest God consciousness, and we must aim very high if we want to attain it. How to overcome negative thinking. If you find it hard to have a positive attitude, if you have doubts, or if your mind is always dwelling on some disease or something else negative, then read Paramahansa Ji's scientific healing affirmations or metaphysical meditations or whispers from eternity. Master gave those affirmations to help us strengthen our minds so that we can develop a positive attitude. Those affirmations are statements of truth. And the truth is that we are divine beings. We are above disease and every form of limitation. In reality, we are perfect individuals. We are pure. It is by accepting negative thoughts that we convince ourselves we are suffering. Practicing affirmations is an excellent way to strengthen the mind and keep it positive so that we can outwardly manifest what we really are, divine souls. Many years ago, I knew a man who couldn't get along with anyone. He was critical of others and always got into arguments with his wife and fellow workers. He knew it was his own fault, but he didn't know how to change. One day, he came to the Hollywood Temple when Master was giving a service there. Afterward, he went to the book room where he purchased a copy of Scientific Healing Affirmations. For 2 hours every day, he read from this book. When he would get to the end, he would start again right from the beginning. He told me that after about 10 days, he was an altogether different individual. His attitude had become positive, and over the years I saw the result. His entire life changed for the better. Faith in God. Practice of affirmations is the mental way of cultivating a positive attitude. There is also the spiritual approach, which is to develop faith in God. When we trust in God, we come to see that He is always with us. And by being optimistic and positive, we become receptive to His help. To develop this faith, we must meditate morning and night and practice the presence of God during the day so that the mind is always on Him. It is good to read Master's books. The idea is to get into that spiritual trend of thought and stay there. If we don't think about God, how can we attain unity with Him? Master used to say, "In the power of thought lies the kingdom of God." Thinking of God creates a divine vibration within us, which automatically banishes all negativity. Be aware of spirit. This is the greatest factor in keeping the mind positive. The Guru's positive attitude. Our Guru was always positive-minded. He lived and taught in a positive way. If someone was negative, he would sense it immediately. That person didn't even have to say anything. Master would pick up that mental vibration. And he would not tolerate negativity in those who sought his training. Sometimes I noticed that if anyone said something negative or pessimistic, Master would turn away from the person and the expression on his face would become one of great determination. He was resisting that negative thought, throwing it out of his consciousness. His mind was so divinely powerful that when a thought became firmly implanted, it would inevitably manifest in outward form. So you see why he was always watchful and did not allow negative thinking. I never heard Master say anything negative or critical. Either he was positive and constructive, or he would say nothing at all. This taught us a valuable lesson. Don't speak or think anything that is negative. In our work, some of us are involved in committees wherein we discuss both sides of a problem, including the negative. Would that be against the principles Paramahansa Yogananda taught? No. When that is your job, you have to analyze all aspects of a situation. Being aware of the negative side of it will help you understand the problem correctly. But then you must come to a positive conclusion and proceed in that direction. At that time, you should forget the negative possibilities. For example, I mentioned earlier that Master taught us not to think or talk about disease or illness. When someone in the ashram was ill or had some kind of accident, we weren't to discuss it, lest our thoughts reinforce the suggestion of disease, making it more difficult for the patient to recover. Often, when one of the devotees was ill, most of the others weren't even aware of it. But, and this is applicable to your question, those whose job it was to take care of that individual were aware of all aspects of the situation, even the negative, and with that knowledge they did all they could to help the person get well. But Master instructed them not to talk about it to others. It was the same when he had a plan to build something. After he and a few others had met and discussed all aspects of the project, the work would begin, without any announcement. Only after the project had progressed would he begin to talk about it to others. His reason for this was that some people would have negative thoughts about the project from the beginning, and he didn't want doubts or skepticism to interfere with what he knew God wished him to accomplish. He knew that the power of thought could greatly help or hinder things. We learned to do just what he asked us without finding fault or excuses or pessimism, and we found that he was always right in what he asked us to do. The Guru's help can free us from negation. During my early days in the ashram, I heard some negative talk and I started having doubts. Being so new in the ashram, you see, I didn't have much understanding. One day, Master walked up to me in the hall and said, "I see you spend your nights doubting." I thought to myself, "Oh, who told him? I never said anything about this to anyone." But then I realized that he knew intuitively what was brewing in my mind. I made an effort to get rid of my doubts, but they wouldn't just go. A couple of weeks later, Master saw me again and said, "I see you still spending your nights doubting. Why do you waste your time like this?" He knew that when I sat to meditate in the evening, my mind was on doubts, but not on God. I made a greater effort, but those negative thoughts persisted. A few months went by, and then one day after temple service, when there were many people lingering near Master, he came over to me. All of the people who were around him suddenly moved on, and I stood there alone with him. This was very unusual because ordinarily, everyone crowded around Master wherever he went. Perhaps this time he purposely emanated some kind of reverse magnetism, so they all left. In any case, there I stood, alone with Master, and he said to me, "I see you are still doubting. The devil is out of you." I thought to myself, why did he say that? I did not see anything or feel anything, but from that moment to this, I found it impossible to doubt. All doubts just cleared away. Such is the power of the Guru's word. This reminded me of how Jesus cast 7 devils out of Mary Magdalene. Those were deeply ingrained bad habits that she had. Master obviously had the power to do that too. He helped us then, and he still helps us now. Many who have come to Self-Realization Fellowship since Master's passing have always told me of the ways they have been helped and getting rid of bad habits and negation by tuning in with Him. His help is always there, but we must make effort too, remembering that positive thinking is the way to progress. Constructive thoughts build us up, and destructive thoughts tear us down. If we fill the mind with divine thoughts by affirmation, by faith in God, and in our own abilities as His children, by practicing His presence wherever we are, we will fully realize what Master taught. In the power of thought lies the kingdom of God.